Hi everyone, back again with my $200 Motorola cell. Just gonna rip this one right direct to YouTube. I got some Tim's cards a few weeks ago that I already opened, because that's just the way it goes these days, and I just thought I'd show you what I got, and have it be an excuse to give my thoughts on the gold medal game from yesterday. I also opened this, something I got from Christmas a while back, and I'll just show you what I got from there as well. But yeah, I mean, only ended up getting 3 packs. I wanted to get more, but obviously it's done today. So there, that can be a good thumbnail. So, I'm not gonna make this about like how bad Canada dominated and all that stuff. I'm not gonna whine about how unfair it is, the 3-on-3. I mean, I get the criticisms about the 3-on-3 because after 40 minutes of like straight domination, now suddenly the second USA has the puck on their stick, they got a goal. They get a good goal opportunity. Like, I understand, but I mean, to me, that argument goes both ways, right? Look at the players we have. The second we have it on our stick, maybe McDavid shouldn't be forcing that puck and driving the net like that because he knows it just gives up possession. Maybe Celebrini shouldn't be firing it into the shin guards of the USA player with a wrist shot from the blue line when Marner's wide open. There were some breakdowns, there's some mistakes in that overtime. So, it is what it is. At the end of the day, we had the game on our stick. I mean, about 500 times, and we didn't convert. They had the game on their stick once, and they did, and they won. So I got to give them props for that. There's a lot of guys on that USA team I do like. I mean, it was Jackie Boy in the end, and he had the game on his stick, and he scored. And, it was a skill thing, really. I think it comes down to he's one of the most skilled players in the world, and when he had the puck in the slot, he didn't miss. I know I'm opening myself up to a lot by just potentially by talking about this stuff because, obviously, I mean, there's some players on that USA team I really despise playing against. They're really insufferable, and so are a lot of their fans, I will say. And, the bigger picture is pretty tough to swallow. You got, pictures of Larkin, who I just dropped my car off at the shop, and the guy said I look like him. Jesus. You got him partying with Kash Patel and stuff, which is just, I know these guys are they're they're kids, young guys, sheltered guys whose whole life has been hockey, but I mean, to me, that's still pretty damn pathetic. That's pretty embarrassing. So it's bigger picture stuff like that, I don't love. I mean, by the way, he was amazing. So, but as a hockey game, it's they scored more goals than us, and that's it. So I don't want to linger on how good Canada was too much. I will say, yes, they did dominate them, but it kind of makes it worse. They gave us it was a different kind of game. It was a different kind of excitement, in my opinion, to the Czech game, where they did give us a game and it was back and forth. All these games were nail biters for different reasons, classics for different reasons. I mean, the Finland game, I watched the last few minutes back 5 times. It was just the sequence of events was so incredible. The goal, 35 seconds, the challenge, the multiple timeouts, the time back on the clock, the game wouldn't end. And with the USA game, it was so exciting and crazy to watch because of just how, if you're from the Canadian perspective, if you're watching, cheering for Canada, how many chances they had. But to me, the total domination makes it worse. We couldn't convert. we didn't do it, So, I mean, for me, the elephant in the room, I guess, with, my channel, I think this is the best pull, right? This is the rarest card. So, kind of nice. But yeah, so that's what I got from Tim's. Here, I just picked up the inserts from this. The elephant in the room, obviously, for this channel, given my name and like kind of whole reason for doing this, is Bedard and the Olympic team snub, which I do think is a big snub. But yeah, I'm just going to try to give my thoughts about this now that it's all said and done. Something I obviously haven't done because, you know, not really uploading. You know, what's new for me, like, we have another kid on the way. I'm kind of doing everything but rip cards, right? I think the next video I actually shot and have is like something for Big Hog to upload, but he's kind of in the same boat in terms of like a lot of stuff going on in his life. And, you know, I don't know when you'll get those videos. Obviously, like, eventually, might as well. We'll just something to, because I don't want this channel to die and at all. Not so. That's kind of, maybe if people respond to this, I'll just do more stuff like this because, yeah, I don't want it to die or anything. And I have a lot of opinions about stuff, and I've kind of held back doing that on the internet, right? And just tried to be like a chill guy who rips cards, but it's not really a reality right now to just be like keeping up with that. So, you know, Bedard not on the team. Yeah, I mean, listen, obvious. It's easy to say. There he is right there. Canada versus Hellebuck. That's what that was. It's easy to say that he should have been on the team, especially in the wake of the loss. But I'll just come out and say, like, obviously the team was good enough without him. Obviously they had the pieces to do it. This team was so good. I mean, yikes. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, you know, it's easy to say they would have won with Bedard. But there's a couple things I do want to point out. For one, I do think that if Bedard is on that team and on that power play, they score on that 5-on-3. I think that's something, I think that's kind of like the main piece I'm kind of, I mean, there's more to it, but I think at the very least, that's something that, and there was room for him because Reinhart was on that PP and he was the 13th forward. So I feel like it's not a stretch to think Bedard could replace Reinhart there. And maybe Celebrini goes in that Reinhart position, and you have Bedard on that lefty quarterback spot. You have Bedard, McCarr, McKinnon, McDavid, and Celebrini on a power play. And might I remind you, right before the injury, when the cuts were, you know, it was really coming down to it, the top 4 point getters in the whole NHL were Bedard, Celebrini, McDavid, and McKinnon. So you could have had all 4 of those guys and the best D-man in the world on a power play, right? Like, you give those guys a 5-on-3, I think Bedard is feeding Celebrini backdoor, something like that. And that's the best pull of that little thing was Demidov. So, you know, there's that. The one thing that, I mean, they probably thought of this, they probably thought of everything, but the one thing I keep coming back to is, like, with Bedard, you can say, in like an objective way, not like a glazing way, that he is arguably, and I'm just looking at the numbers, I have my opinion, but even just basic, just flat numbers, like flat facts, he is arguably the greatest Canadian international player under 20 that we've ever seen. Most successful, whatever you want to call it. You know, he didn't even play up until 20, only up till 17. This guy's got 2 gold medals, 23 points in 7 games on the last World Juniors. When this guy puts on a Canadian jersey, he doesn't just completely dominate and light everything up. He scores the biggest goals. And what frustrates me is the potential for him to be, the potential with him on this team was like limitless. We don't know what we could have had, but we do know what we had with these other players. We do know what it looks like when someone like Marner played, like McDavid, McKinnon, these are already these top guys, and we know what it looks like when Marner plays with them. We know what it looks like when Bennett plays with them. We know what it looks like when a lot of these guys are on this team. We saw it at Four Nations and whatnot, and we see it with these guys who are on these, Stanley Cup contending teams. We have never seen that with Bedard. He was fourth in points at that time with someone like Ryan Green on his line, which is a point that's beaten to death. But Ryan Green is a guy who never even had a 20-goal season in the USHL. These are not, he's that whole team. You take a guy who's the whole team on a bad team to the degree he's almost leading the league in points, and you put him with McDavid and McKinnon, we don't know what that could have been. I think it's reasonable. I think even his biggest critics or people who don't believe he should have been there can agree there is a more than zero chance he leads the whole tournament or close in points playing with guys like that, or at least gets a lot of points. Look at Celebrini. And I'm not here to say who's better or this or that. Celebrini was incredible at this tournament. He played with those guys and he led the whole tournament in goals. Now, I'm not saying definitively Bedard does that too or gets more points than McDavid or something, but I think it's clear he'd be up there. And my point here is that you cannot say that about some of these other guys that made this team. You cannot put Jarvis on that roster and think, oh, now he's going to lead the tournament in points. You're not going to think that with Horvat. You're not going to think that with Cirelli, who originally made it. You're not going to think that with Bennett, Wilson, Suzuki, Hagel even. All these guys, it's not in the cards for them. And you can argue that that's not their role, which I totally get. But that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that, maybe this is what it looks like when you opt for all of these depth guys. Because at the end of the day, Canada scored 6 goals in 3 elimination games. 6 goals in the games that mattered the most. That's averaging 2 goals a game. And it's not obvious that that's not good enough, because it almost was. These were always going to be tight, close games. But, maybe Bedard adds the extra point or two that we needed that you're never going to get from Seth Jarvis. I knew he wasn't going to make it. I always had that feeling. But when Point went down, I thought for sure he's the guy to replace him. But then they added Jarvis, who's, no shade to any of these guys, they're all great players, and some of them, like Horvat, really impressed me and had great tournaments and were clutch. Suzuki scored a clutch goal. I'm not going to take that away from these guys, but Jarvis was never going to be that guy. And Jarvis is just another one of these players that they already had so many of. He's already a Cirelli, a Bennett, a Hagel. He already was that. Why did we need another one, right? And people act like there wasn't a spot for Bedard, but it's clear that's the exact kind of player we lacked, right? You can talk till you're blue in the face about how good Hellebuck was, but that open net McKinnon had him missing that has nothing to do with Hellebuck's brilliance. He missed the open net, and the kind of player Bedard is brings in the chance for more of those opportunities. He's the guy who makes more of those things happen. He's the guy who's going to be feeding McKinnon backdoor, another, later in the game potentially. And you're not getting that from these other guys. That's not their role, and it's not, and we knew that. And so just maybe that's what this looks like when you have too many of these depth guys. We dominate, we're good enough to win, but we don't, because we don't score. And it's been a problem in Canadian international hockey for a few years now. The last World Juniors was a bit of they kind of started to get it, and they changed it up a bit. But it's been something I've noticed. Other than Bedard, we kind of have a scoring issue at these tournaments. So, that is kind of all I wanted to say. I just think he had the highest potential out of any player who was in the running for that team to kind of break out. And I think we needed, in some ways, Olympics are about that pure skill. And we needed more guys who could do things you can't teach. These role players do things that you can teach, that you need. Bennett, in the Finland game, won that draw. He was out there with a second left, and he won the draw. Bedard probably wouldn't even get picked for that, wouldn't win that draw. I get it. But you needed more guys who could do things you can't teach, and he was really the most obvious best choice in that matter, and I think it's a factor that we ultimately lacked. Um, Maybe if he's in the slot on that power play, or some of those chances Celebrini had, which not taking anything away from him, but maybe his like angle changing shot, one of those goes in for, you know. Because the last thing I'll say is like, I remember in Bedard's rookie year, there was a game where they were playing against a much better team. Actually, I think at that point it was the best team in the league, and they won 2-1 in overtime. And Bedard took the game over. It was like the first real time I'd seen him do that. He was the whole team. He scored both goals. And the OT winner was a wrist shot from outside the ringette line. A shot that, even at the NHL level, has no business beating an NHL goalie. No business shooting a wrist shot like mid-height to the net from that far out, unscreened, really has no business going in. But it's because of his deception and the way he changed the angle of the shot that he scored, and it was an overtime game-winning goal. And that was against the Winnipeg Jets, and the goalie was Connor Hellebuck. So I think that's what I'll leave you with. I hope this doesn't cause like a bunch of annoying comments or anything like that, but I just feel like I wanted to upload something. This was the biggest thing in hockey in a long time, and it's kind of a hockey channel, and I'm not really able to do much else, and I don't want it to just kind of die. So those are some cards I got recently. Those are my thoughts on the game and the tournament. I think ultimately, like, amazing hockey, amazing to watch, and none of this is to take away from how good we were and how close we were. But yeah, I do think Bedard should have been there. I'm not saying anything definitive, or anyone can really know, like, what. No one can really know that it would have actually changed anything. But I think what he brings to the game and to that team is what ultimately they lacked. And like, despite how insufferable it is in many ways, props to the USA for scoring more goals. It's something we objectively could not do. So, all right, guys. Bye.